Hello everyone, this is Southern Hellenic. I'm back with another video. So this is going to be absolutely going to be my last video for today because I'm sort of getting tired of doing videos for today. I'm going to have two videos releasing tomorrow. One of them is going to be for the ritual prayer for the last full week of the month. I am going to say that next week I am not going to be doing a ritual video request because I'm going to be out of town for the next 7 days, and you definitely will not get one the week after next because I have a doctor's appointment on the 9th, and I don't know when the next day that I will have it off, because I'll be honest, if I don't get Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off, I'm not going to be upset, because I literally had 4 days off the first week, so I'm not going to be upset if I don't get Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off. So, yeah, I am not going to be upset at all. I'll just go to work and work it. But, yeah. So, today we're going to be talking about women's rights in ancient Greece. And I am going to mention slightly Rome as well, because they did have a series. They did have a priestesshood. I'll say priestesshood in Rome, known as the Vestal Virgins. So I'm definitely going to be talking about them, and I'm also going to include the city-state of Sparta in this video because I did not include them the first time I did the video. So before I begin, I want to do an update. The Orphic hymns was actually supposedly written by Orpheus, and that's where that's why it's called the Orphic hymns, because it was written by Orpheus. Don't know if he really in fact existed, but he does have the hymns attributed to him because supposedly he wrote them. So I did find out that. Okay, so another thing I want to say, I am going to be doing a video about the Heliots in June, and I'm also going to be doing a lot more videos on different Hellenic holidays, and I am going to try to do the ritual. If I have to close the night that the ritual, I will do it the next day. My body is sort of getting used to the idea that, I did mention this before, it is sort of trying to get used to the fact that I'm actually getting sleep. So yeah, I am really excited about finally being able to get a good night's sleep and all that jazz. But for people that may not know, I'm going to get my refill next week, but I'm not going to start it again until Monday, the last Monday of the month, because I want to have it on me when I go down to Virginia, and I also want to make sure that I still have enough of my prescription ibuprofen, so when I do come back to work, I will have some form of pain relief. So that's my plan on my steroids that I'm taking currently. Okay, so getting to women's rights in ancient Greece. Most of ancient Greece, women's lives were very different than they are now. So we have people that complain about women, they're losing control of the anatomy of their body. Trust me, it's nothing like it was back then. And I'm not saying that I am happy that Roe versus Wade may be overturned. I'm not. But historically, women have more rights now than they did 2,000 years ago or even 800 years ago. So let's put this in a historical context, so it's why I point out what I say. So women in ancient Greece were considered the property of their fathers. they were between the husband or the father slash later on the husband and the slave. They were like right in the middle. Slaves had no festivals they could go to, but women did have a couple, including the lesser mysteries. And I do also believe they could also participated in the Eleusinian mysteries. I do believe they did. Now let me take that back. They did do it. Because they could participate in the lesser mysteries, I would assume they could also participate in the Eleusinian mysteries. So when we talk about women in the home, and this is where we get a lot of our information about how women were treated and viewed in ancient times. Seemed like every room in the house had an altar to the gods. Probably why there was a lot of ventilation areas, because it was a lot of smoke. But so you had an altar for the marriage bed, which is probably run by the man. And behind that, you had the kitchen and basically the women's area. And the women and the slaves were in this area, and they were responsible for ensuring that the house ran smoothly. Now, talking about the altar, the shrine to the marriage gods and all that. So essentially, when a woman got married, so you know how you have like the woman so overjoyed she's being pushed to the threshold and it's all wonderful, great. It wasn't like that in ancient Greece. Women literally knew what was coming, and husbands didn't give their wives' bodies time to. So there was rape going on in that marriage bed, because I really doubt that 99.9% of the women found their husbands sexually attractive. So yes, he probably raped her in the marriage bed, and that was considered okay to do that because it's in the confines of marriage. Women do not have the right to say, no, I'm not having sex with you today because you're a dirty, filthy man and you haven't taken a bath in 8 years. No, I'm not having sex with you. No, you will have sex with me because you're the woman. You are the lesser being, blah, blah, blah. So, now, there was some cases where you had women that were like hopelessly in love with their husbands and willingly gave them what they wanted. And you had some wives and husbands in business that were nasty to their competition. So women were very different. Maybe some women like that stuff. I don't know. But anyways. So you have women that are in the back of the house and they are not seen by the husband's visitors. Somehow, the only people that are seen in the house is the slaves. So while the woman is cooking and baking and all this type of stuff, the slaves would go around and would do their duty. And so women weren't seen. They were like the invisible part of the house. Now, I'm not saying they weren't entirely not seen. You have women that would go to the market with her slaves. They would listen to, the poets, would go down and watch a play. So women weren't totally confined to their home because they did go out and they did enjoy the things of the town, especially Athens. You go to a play. There was no, well, you have to be a man to go to watch a play. Women could go and watch plays. They could, as I said, listen to poets. They could sit and think about things. So they weren't totally and 100% solely limited on what they could and could not do. But as far as the things that men could do, they could not do that. They could not debate. They could not, their births weren't recorded. Their daughters' births were not recorded. Their sons' births were recorded. And, they went through all the pain and suffering of stillbirths and miscarriages and all that type of stuff. And there is also some evidence that women actually use stuff to keep from getting pregnant. Especially they kept on having dead babies. So, yeah, you would definitely not want to get pregnant because you wouldn't want to go through that pain again. As I said, there was a women's only festival. When we talk about the priesthood of different gods and goddesses, I did read that the temple to Artemis in Ephesus, it was originally run by women, then the men kicked them out and took over. I think they probably thought that it gave the priestesses too much power. Kind of reminds me of the early church where women were basically in charge and the men kicked them out and everything. And it was supposed to be promised to be a religion without, everybody was equal, and it turned into a male-controlled religion, which they inherited from the Romans and, of course, the Greeks. If you go and look at other countries, other pagan nations like the Celtic tribes and the Egyptian Empire, and especially the Norse, women did have a lot more rights. They could own property. They could leave their husbands and get their dowry back. Things like that. These were things women could do. They had a lot more freedom and a lot more movement. This is why there's more of a evidence of female warriors in like Norse countries or Boudica leading an army out against the Romans, because the Romans represented oppression for women. They showed their oppression for women by raping her daughters. Because they did not recognize a woman being in charge. And this all goes back to their views about women being lesser than men. And also it also goes back to the last time a woman was in power, it was in Egypt, and her name was Cleopatra. So, they still had not forgotten about that one. But, yeah, okay, it was Cleopatra. But in all seriousness, Romans had more of a dislike for women than the Greeks did. And the only women's only club that you would see in Rome was the Vestal Virgins, but they were under all of these different rules, and they were, of course, still controlled by men, but they had a lot more freedom. And they were not considered property. They were considered to be in service to the goddess Vesta. Another one of the routes that a woman could take if she didn't want to be married to an ugly guy was she could become a priestess of the goddess Aphrodite. In other words, a sacred prostitute. Which was a very enjoyable job because they could decide if you were too ugly or too handsome. If you were too handsome, they definitely bedded you, and if you were too ugly, you didn't get anything. Just simple as that. The women in the Temple of Aphrodite, they had a lot more control over their bodies, and they could decide if they wanted to have sex with you. I don't really think it was controlled by men because it was Aphrodite, so I'm going to probably guess it was controlled by women. Let me look that up, because now I'm interested. Okay. So this is the Temple of Aphrodite at Corinth was a sanctuary to the ancient Corinth. In ancient Corinth, dedicated to the goddess Aphrodite, it was the main temple of the goddess in Corinth and famous for its alleged temple prostitution. All right. I just love this. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So it's interesting. It was a site of sacred prostitution. Um, and of course, if you're a religion like Christianity and you see a temple that is dedicated to sacred prostitution and it is overflowing with money and wealth and riches, yeah, you're gonna go in there and you're going to shut the temple down and you're going to take all of that money and you're going to freaking do stuff to the people inside. And it wasn't pretty. At least that's what I'm thinking, because that's just how they were. Now, I am not going to forget these lovely people, because I think that they really are a contrast in looks. So I mentioned about women in Athens and other places that had basically had no rights. The only city-state that women had greater mobility was the city-state of Sparta. And women, they had a lot more mobility and rights, and probably a lot more rights on who they married. So, Spartan women were required to give birth to Spartan boys. However, if she gave birth to a girl, the girl was raised to, of course, want to give birth to Spartan boys, but also they were very athletic. So in Athens and other places, women couldn't participate in the Olympics. They had their own, which proved that they were just as athletic as the dudes. I don't remember where it was located, but it was the Olympics for women. So women would, do all the stuff that men did. And they were naked and all that jazz, because that's what you did. You were naked at the Olympics. No matter if it was for the men or for the women, you were naked at the Olympics, except for the spectators, they weren't naked. I know people can say, of course they weren't naked. Really? But anyway, seriously. So Spartan girls, they exercised. They believed in being thin and fit, because that's what you were. Greeks cared about the body and how it looked. And so that's probably why they had female Olympics, because, women wanted to exercise and compete, and they wanted to show they had much of a competing spirit as their male counterparts. But there's a painting. I don't know the name of the artist, and if I did, it was probably hard to pronounce. Did a painting of Spartan girls, they're naked from the waist up, and they're around, fully naked boys. They're exercising. And it's really interesting because there's no shying away. Girls knew what boys' anatomy looked like. And it really did help the whole shy thing that you generally have when you undress your man for the first time, or how a number of times. But generally it was in my own opinion that if you've seen the male anatomy, you're not shy when you see it again. So they were exercising in this painting, and I thought it was a really interesting painting because it showed that the girls as well as the boys were obsessed over their bodies. They were obsessed over making sure they were strong. and healthy, and they didn't have fat. And that was something Spartan girls and Spartan women prided themselves on, was having this beautiful body, this athletic, being busy, not, they didn't sit on their butts and just get fat. They were out there and they were exercising, and they were, I mean, literally they would make exercise enthusiasts jealous. But that was just how the Greeks were. And women in Sparta were no different. Women in Athens were no different. They all liked the perfect body, and they liked representing that. But anyways, but it's really interesting when you really read about how women were perceived. And that's why if you really go and look at marriage ceremonies, they were actually the transferring of property, and probably a couple other things. But mainly it was, you have to leave home and you have to go to a new home, and you have to be in that home. So anyways, so I wanted to just mention that in it here. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and until tomorrow, I'll see you guys around. So until next time, may you be happy, healthy, most importantly be safe, and hail to the gods. Bye.